Good evening and welcome to the rest of the news. Our special guest today is Ed Holloway, who is a former state representative, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Muslim terrorism in the United States. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's a good way to summarize it, because it's constantly increasing, and then the terroristic parts are taking a more active role than they've have in a long time. So it's going to be something that every American should be very concerned about.
Well, it seems like almost every week there's another blow up or killing of police or something.
There are some 250 individuals now that are under somewhat of a surveillance, but in talking with the FBI, they would need 25 to 30 people to have 24-hour coverage of an individual. And tying that with the number, the FBI just doesn't have the manpower to do it. And there's several organizations now that, from a Christian standpoint, that are involved in putting the word out, and one of which is the Christians Against Radical Islam.
Right.
And you had some very good information from them, and they're very concerned because we all know that, and I read headlines occasionally in different publications about the number of Christians that are being persecuted and slaughtered and beheaded, and even now into Pakistan, as well as Syria and some of the other countries, and Libya now is joined a very radical part of it. And that was all part of the breakdown that occurred in our so-called Arab Spring.
Yeah.
And in that process, things became very radical all throughout the Middle East.
Well, let me just hold this up. This is some of the information you're referring to, and it's called To Conquer America Through Civilization, Jihad, the Muslim Brotherhood's Master Plan. Well, we want to send you a copy of this. It's a brochure, and we're trying to get copies of it right now, but we're hoping to be able to send that to you. And while we're talking about it, this is a summary of Islam in the world over the last 1,500 years or so, and it was a lecture given by Bill Federer on the history of Islam. And if you call us right now, we'll send you both of these free. And the number to call is 893-2444, and you can call right now.
Yeah, it's in order to understand, we've all heard about the Muslim Brotherhood and all these other things, and we know that Hillary's top aide, her family was deeply involved in the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. All of these things are all infiltrated into the federal government at every level. And in order to understand it, you've got to go back to the founding of it, which happened back in 1928. There was a son of an Islamic cleric that came to the United States as a student, and he saw all the decadent things that were going on in America. This was during the Roaring Twenties and all those things. His name was Hassan al-Banna, and he went back to Egypt and formed the Muslim Brotherhood. And from that, every radical Islamic organization, the Mujahideen, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, all of those have their roots in the Muslim Brotherhood.
Right.
And it's a very large organization. It has splinter groups across the whole United States now, and they've increased. And we watched this grow, and it all goes back to 1924 when the Ottoman Empire fell apart. And they want to rebuild the caliphate and make all of America, of the whole world, under one Islamic rule.
Yeah.
And that's just where it becomes very frightening. But one thing beyond anything else you can say about the Muslims and the Arabs is patience. Patience, time. And this is one of the things where some of the radicals disagree with some of the Muslims. There's a disagreement. They think we need to force it now, some of them. And the others said, no, time will take care, and we will have that and what this is called the civilization jihad.
Right.
The civilization jihad is to increase the number of immigrants, to increase the number, and if you look at what's happening in America, the numbers that we have now and the increasing numbers and the birth rate among American Islamic members is increasing dramatically compared to the rest of the country. So they're continuing to increase and they're getting involved in politics. We now have an Arab newspaper in Jefferson County with over 3,000 in circulation. And all of these things are taking a slow and radical approach to what they want to and eventually to gain control. You have that in Michigan where a complete community is turned. It was 90% Polish Americans at one point, and now it's been forced by Muslims. They now take control. The ones that are left there that are Polish are moving out. They can't cope with that. They've taken over the city council, the government, and everything else there. So all of these things are happening slowly. It's not being reported by the media. And you've got Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and even some Republicans that keep telling that Islam is a great religion and Islam is a religion of peace.
Yeah.
And it's not. And basically, if you read the Quran, and everybody should read the Quran, and there's two copies, the original, and then there's an American version that they've printed, a special one that's all bells and whistles that doesn't get into the guts of it. Islam has religious, legal, political, economic, social, and military components. All of those are all part of it. And it is the jihad and all of that is that, and that everyone who is not a member of Islam is an infidel. And it doesn't matter whether you're Jewish, Christian, atheist, Buddhist, it doesn't matter. You are, and you have either the ability to convert to Islam or face execution.
Obama keeps bringing more and more and more Muslims into the country. And the Christians, which have been persecuted the most, he won't let any of them in.
And this is the frightening thing because automatically, and they've actually increased the number of citizenships. They've escalated that process to the point that they want them to be able to vote in the November elections. And that makes the November elections a very critical thing because Hillary and her top aide being a member, her families are members of the Brotherhood and all that, and a lot of the others. And even Barack Obama's chief aide, Valerie Jarrett, calls herself the Iranian American. She was raised in Iran and has all of her contacts and family and other things. So all of those things, combined with the fact that he has had the Muslim Brotherhood as a frequent guest at the White House ever since he was elected, in fact, more times than any other organization. So all of those things are critical to the future and the survival of America as we know it.
Right.
And
he's put a lot of these Muslim terrorists, Muslim Brotherhood people in
key positions.
The key positions of the government, like Homeland Security.
Yeah, Homeland Security. And getting back to the publication that's available now through Civilization Jihad, it goes back to 2004 when a woman was actually photographing and filming the support structure for the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. She became a target for the FBI and others, and they got a search warrant that searched the home, and they found a hidden sub-basement in the house, and the FBI discovered that it housed the archives of the Muslim Brotherhood in America. Included in was a 5-phase plan, which the Muslim Brotherhood and their front groups planned to turn America into an Islamic country.
Right.
And it was that the Holy Land Foundation trial. There were 250 people and organizations. Enough evidence was compiled by the FBI to bring them to trial. But Eric Holder, at that time, Attorney General, chose not to proceed. And all of those things that have been slowly going on is not something that's happened just overnight.
In other words, the Obama administration did not want to pursue all of this.
Exactly. And at the end, the vast majority of the Islamic organizations that we've listed in that article, the Council on Islamic Relations and Islamic Society of North America, and in 1963, the Muslim Brotherhood created their first American Fund organization at the University of Illinois, and the Muslim Student Association. And it's now chartered in over 100 colleges and universities throughout the United States, and they're training those. We now have 6,000 Muslims now in the U.S. military. They're coming into that, and you remember a couple of things, very little information was said about them, where a Muslim American soldier threw a grenade into a tent in Afghanistan and killed several of our officers. The one in...
When was that now?
That was...
a few years back.
About 10 years ago, when we were still in Afghanistan, and then the one down at Fort Hood.
Oh, yeah.
And all of that. And because of what's happened, the FBI and other organizations that traditionally respond to protecting America in every category, all of the training information was taken out that related to Muslims,
right,
and of the FBI training manuals and everything else. And political correctness is another element that's been interjected into this whole issue, and you can't say anything about a Muslim or anything else like that. So all of these things that have been working slowly and collectively, it's like a cancer. The slow growth has been, and it could very well become fatal if we don't take action against it.
Well, it seems like Obama is behind a lot of this and has allowed it to take place and to put the Muslim terrorist brotherhood in key government positions.
Exactly.
And the thing I like most, I think is most important about what you're saying is this is not us making this up. This is actually from the Muslim Brotherhood.
This is the direct text of theirs. And
yeah.
It's been a little bit like a Reader's Digest condensed version.
Yeah.
As they put it into this book line, but they put every key element that was in there about their plan for taking over America. And if you look at the time frame and everything else, they're right on target. And we've got to make sure we elect a president in 2016 who understands the true threat to America and the civilization from the Islamic world.
Well, and like you say, it seems like the Obama administration has been pushing, bringing 2 million or at least 1 million Muslims in here. And Hillary has got the same idea, bring more and more Muslims. Forgot about the Christians that are in need, just Muslims. And if we're going to have more of that, then we're in big trouble.
And their whole objective is to increase the number of voters to keep themselves in power, and that without thinking of the consequences that will derive from that kind of thing. And we got to make sure, and we need to contact every member of Congress that to put the lid on this importation of all these Muslims that are coming in here. And there's no way to screen them. There's no sources at the country of origin or anything else. And I'm a history buff, and I've studied history all of my life, and I was history. But I look back and think about the Muslims, and even the Marine Corps hymn includes a team to the shores of Tripoli.
Right.
That's when Thomas Jefferson was president, and our first war was against the Muslims in Tripoli.
Yeah.
They were stopping American ships, taking the sailors, turning them into slaves and murder, and holding all of our ships as ransom and all of those things. And Thomas Jefferson said, we're not going to stand for it.
Well, it seems that the Muslims are the only people now that are still taking slaves.
Right.
And these sex slaves and all this that's still going on, just like worse than before. It's just a terrible thing, the way they are making slaves out of people.
And it's been a tradition with them. And then all of the slaves that came to the Americas, and then only 4% came to the United States, but into the Caribbean islands and South America, all of those were captured by Muslims brought to the coast and sold to the Dutch, the French, and others. And that was the slave trade that developed.
Bill Federer goes into all of the Islamic history going back over 1,000 years. And it's all in here. And just what Ed has been saying, that they've been big on slavery and especially women, sex slaves, for a for 1,000 years or more. And he has pictures and explains all about how the Muslims have been trying to take over the world for 1,000 years. It's really important to know that. So if you'll call us right now at 893-2444, we'll send this to you perfectly free. And as soon as we get them, we'll send you this brochure, too, of what Ed's been talking about, the Muslim Brotherhood, and how, in their own words, they're saying they're trying to take over America.
And this was what was found by the FBI. And you can see that in this political makeup that's going on now. And the fact that Americans, over 80%, do not trust the government.
No, absolutely not.
And,
because they're the ones that are bringing all these Muslims in.
Exactly. And we've got to find a way to channel all of that energy into correcting the problems that are facing us. And so it's an ongoing battle.
And the Christians that are in need, they won't bring any of them in, just Muslims, that a certain percentage of which are terrorists.
And most of the humanitarian supplies that we send in are confiscated by the people that are causing the problem. And all of these things are going on constantly. And again, the media and others who are all part of this political corrective and all this involvement with diversity,
right,
are failing to report and bringing Americans awareness to all of the problems that are facing us.
I mean, it's amazing how they refuse to report the news of these terrorist attacks, which are almost every week now, and they won't even mention the word Muslim terrorism.
No, but one of the things that we find that has accelerated a lot of this is the computer. And the ISIS and others are utilizing that form of communication and all of those things to radicalize the number of Americans and a surprising number of young people who were born in America whose parents came from the Islamic countries who never have felt that they were part of America and never want to be, and they were the ones that ISA has been recruiting in a lot of cases, and it turns out they are American citizens or not others. So all of these things are being put into play, and the computer is playing a major role in the recruiting process. And ISIN is very sophisticated. They've got some high-tech people involved in putting those things together, and all of their propaganda that they're filtering through the Facebooks and all the other forms of communication, and something that has to be addressed as well.
Well, I see in this booklet it says that the Muslims are trying to get into the public school system.
Very much so.
And want to have pledge allegiance to Allah. And then these big, rich Saudi Arabia has given money to Harvard and all these big colleges and say, oh, well, we want you to say something good about Islam.
And they're also financing the construction
of the
operation of the mosque.
Absolutely.
The mosques that are numbered, the numbers have been increasing constantly. There's well over 2,000 now in the United States, and each one of those has an educational system within it. And in even parts of Jefferson County, there are actually Islamic schools to teach the children and get them at the earliest age to bring them into the fold and understand all that. So, and we now have a major problem with, we can go into this in time after time after time and make a list that'll go a mile long, because you're taking into these families are brought in here, a lot of which cannot speak English. They're provided with housing, food, clothing, medical supplies, and everything that
education.
They need. And Then you got into the education. We don't have the teachers and others that even speak their languages. We've got almost 200 different kind of languages that are going on in the school system. Teachers can't cope with it. And education has just reached a plateau and it's flattened out. And it cost everybody, and including the American children that have been here for generations.
It seems to me that these mosques are actually teaching children how to hate Americans, hate Christians, hate Jews, and how to make bombs and how to blow people up.
This is the part, too, that they've been prohibited from going near a mosque or to infiltrate the mosque. These are the kind of things that need to be.
Well, so the Obama administration won't let the FBI do their job and to find out what's going on in these mosques.
And for example, the one we built in Jefferson County was financed by the Saudis, and very large. And we've got another one in Kentucky that's being built. We had radicals that were arrested in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Yeah,
they're scattered all over, and in that process, some of the clerics and others are part of the radical movement, and they are the ones that are instructing the children in the mosque. And we've even got branches out in community, what they call Islamic centers. Islamic centers are throughout the communities, and this is another part where they indoctrinate young people and make radicalization a part of their life.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I was thinking is the Muslims, they can have 2, 3, 4 different wives.
Right.
And so they have, each wife has several children. So they are increasing in numbers because they don't have, normal marriages. They have several wives, and each wife has to have several children. And so that's all part of how they're getting more and more Muslims till they can vote and take over the country.
And they have no regard for women per se.
Oh, mercy. No.
And this is problem that Sweden's facing with it's what they call the rape capital of the world now. And they're having the same problem in Great Britain.
And this election is going to be a turning point.
And it's never been a more important election in the history of America.
Because all of this Muslim promoting Islam that the Obama administration has been doing is going to be taken over by Hillary and push more and more Muslims.
And I'll quote the professor at the University of Kentucky, who is a Muslim, and a Muslim Islam or Middle East studies. He said that the Muslims will never assimilate into the American society.
Absolutely, and it's reaching a critical time, and this election is going to be very important.
There have been over 300 white people shot in the form, and very few blacks. But the blacks that shoot blacks are just a fantastic number. There's 3,000 shootings in Chicago alone.
And George Soros, I understand, is putting millions into
all of these different these front organizations
to kill police and things like that.
Yeah, he's a big supporter of the
burn buildings and everything. He's paying all these people to go around the country and start riots.
And unbelievably, some people profit from this. What you got to do is go with what we've got, and there's no comparison between the two in terms of what they feel about Islam and the importation of more and more of these so-called refugees.
If you don't vote for the best of what you got, then you're going to get the worst of what you got.
Exactly.
And they have millions and millions of dollars they're pouring in to get more Muslims into the United States so they can basically take it over.
At the point now that everybody needs to make sure they go to the polls and vote.
Well, that's right. Now, if you haven't had a voter registration drive in your church, you need to call us right now, 893-2444, and we'll send you a packet how you can have voter registration in your church.
Right.
And it has to be done by October 11th.
Right.
because that's the deadline to get the new voter registrations into the county clerk's office.
We've reached a point, too. There are several local elections that are involved, members of Congress.
Yes.
And the U.S. Senate.
Yes.
And again, there's very little information being put out by the media about some of this.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And but I'm very encouraged by what I'm hearing from a lot of my friends in the black community.
Yeah.
About what they feel, and they're beginning to recognize and using the term that the Democratic plantation.
Oh, yeah.
They've been close to be part of for so long. It's something that they are taking a serious look at, and that's about to change.
Absolutely, and, that's great.
While a lot of them will not come out and probably will not vote a Republican at this stage, but they're definitely not going to vote for a Democrat named Hillary Clinton.
Well, let's see. We're about running out of time again, but I want to remind you that this is a free DVD of the entire history of Islam going back over 1,000 years, and it's totally free if you call us right now, 893-2444. And also, we're going to send you a free copy of this booklet, and just call that same number, 893-2444. And this talks about how the Muslim Brotherhood is trying to take over America. Right. And that's not my idea. Right. That's what they say in their own writings, that they're here to take over America. And you can see under Obama how they are doing it and how he's putting more and more Muslim Brotherhood people into the government. And, of course, the last thing I want to mention is give us a call and we'll send you a whole packet how you can have voter registration in your church. And it's free. Everything is free. Just call us right now, 893-2444, and we'll get it out to you right away. And it's really important.
And again, the booklet and the information and all of that captured by the FBI
yes.
should remove any doubt that anybody ever had about Islamic jihadism.
Yeah, they have it in their own words,
exactly.
Their own documents. They're here to take us over. And, of course, Obama's doing everything he can to help them and bringing in millions and millions of other Muslims.
And he's accelerated that in the last few months of his administration.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're about out of time. Thanks for watching. Tune in next week for the rest of the news.